Hey, what is going on, everybody? Welcome to Upkick MMA, episode number 187. I am Brendan. Anderson Silva versus Jake Paul, the boxing match. Oh my God. Like, what did I just watch? Holy crap. Not that it was bad. It was actually, well, if you want to talk about like high level boxing, that was not it. This is always going to be the caveat that gets thrown out. But Jake Paul defeating Anderson Silva via unanimous decision. Let's break it down here. Let's talk about that stuff real quick before we get into it. If you like MMA, you like podcasts about MMA, you like boxing. Sometimes I do boxing too. I appreciate it if you subscribe to the channel so you know when the next video is coming out. If you like breakdowns, I break down round by round. I put out 2 or 3 videos every single week, but let's get started. So, Anderson Silva versus Jake Paul. Now, going into this, I thought Anderson Silva would be able to outbox Jake Paul. Right? That's what I was expecting. That's not what happened here. I mean, we'll get into it round by round and how I scored it. And I believe I scored it pretty accurately. I mean, in my honestly, I mean this in my humble opinion, I believe I scored it pretty accurately. There's a couple rounds that could have gone the other way. 2 judges actually didn't have the same scorecard I did, but I scored it. I scored it for Paul as well. So, real quick, let's just take the macro picture of what kind of happened here. So Jake Paul developed a jab, which has not been a great tool in his toolbox. He went to the body early, and he has some veteran techniques that I really dislike in boxing. But hey, it's part of the sport, and I'll get to it later. So he didn't outbox Silva necessarily, but Silva he waited too long. He was too patient in these rounds. And honestly, looking at how Silva looked in the last couple rounds, being tired, I kind of get it. He was pacing himself, and he just was missing out. Just a couple times. He got hit one too many times in some of the rounds, and he just didn't have enough output, right? A lot of those rounds were close. The last round was not close, but like I said, we'll get into it. So first round here, Paul was leaning to the right, throwing out the jab, right? He was leaning down, throwing out the jab at Anderson, and Anderson pretty much gave away the first round. He was on the back foot, making reads. You know, you got 8 minutes here. Sorry, you got 8 rounds here, so it's okay to give one if your strategy pays off. It didn't in this case. But, Silva was leaning out of the way of a few shots, not even having to move fast. It was kind of interesting. He was just positioning himself so well in this first round. And then Paul started throwing to the body. He landed a couple good body shots. And that was cool. That was good for him. Paul won this first round, right? Silva landed a beautiful left straight while sliding out of the way of the jab at one point. Paul landed more in the first round, though. He landed more, and I thought it was going to be interesting if he could keep that pace for all 8 rounds, because Anderson's known for kind of picking it up after making his reads early on in the fight. So I had a 10-9 Paul. Now, Silva was feinting and moving forward and super aggressive to start the second round. Silva went to the body, throwing combos. Silva was dancing backwards like Ali. He was doing all the stuff. Paul was swinging bad. He was missing crazy. Silva was playing around in there. This looked like vintage Anderson Silva. He was ducking down super low, dodging, dancing, while landing like this beautiful right hand and then a left. Silva landed some really great shots in the second round, made Paul miss a ton. I had it even 19-19 going into the third round. This is where I felt like, okay, Silva's making his move. He's going to play with him. I mean, this guy just beat Julio Cesar Chavez like 3 years ago or whatever. Or 2 years ago. And here's the thing. Even since then, he doesn't look that good. As good. And it showed in these later rounds. And he is, I think, 46 or 47 years old. And, age, he's not the fighter he used to be. He's not the spider that we knew in MMA. And this is not to take away from Jake Paul and the progress that he's made, but and I'm not gonna make that stupid argument, because that's not where we're living. We're not living back then when Jake Paul, in their primes, who would win? That's a stupid thing. That's not what's happening. It doesn't matter. So in this third round, Silva was moving in and unloading when he wanted to. Paul really had to clinch to stop the pressure. And then Paul landed 2 really good shots in this third round, but Silva landed like 20. Silva's nose was bleeding, and it was because every time Paul went to go clinch, Silva would duck his head down to try and prevent the clinch to stop him from putting an end to the damage that Silva was putting out. So I actually gave this third round, and I think this is one of those rounds that people might go either way on. I gave it to Silva, 29-28. And let me just state my bias ahead of time. Of course, I'm a huge Anderson Silva fan. I was a fan of his when he was in the UFC. I've been a fan of his ever since he started his boxing career, starting up his boxing career again. And, I tried to take myself out of this one. So maybe my bias leaned me towards Silva more, but I really think I can make the argument that Silva won this round. So if you're in disagreement with me, I understand, and I would love for you to engage and tell me why you thought he won this round or why you thought Paul won this round. More than welcome. I might even be able to be convinced, but based off what I saw, those 2 good shots didn't outweigh all the damage and all the pressure that Silva was putting on. Third round here. Paul starts, or fourth round. I had a 29-28 for Silva. Paul complaining about Silva pulling his head down. And so he starts the round out complaining. And then Paul lands a really great right hand. And then Silva lands a combo, finishing with an uppercut. Paul started going to the body again, so he picked that back up. So he took 2 rounds off from going to the body, and I think that's because Anderson's pressure made it so he couldn't dig to the body and not worry about a counter, right? When Anderson's sitting on the back foot and trying to counter you or trying to make reads or taking some time to recuperate or keep his energy, going to the body, striking at distance is safer, and he can go to the body without the worry of being countered. So when Silva's moving forward, he wasn't going to the body as hard. Silva ended the round with Paul on the ropes and landing great shots and in a beautiful uppercut. Like, that was the story from Silva, right? He landed this uppercut amazingly over and over again. It's something that I thought Tyron Woodley really missed out on in the first interaction with Jake Paul. I felt like the uppercut was out there all day because Paul tends to duck his head down. But this round was Paul's. He did more damage throughout the whole round. He landed the bigger shots. I had 38-38. All right, fifth round here. Paul was trying to clinch. He's trying to clinch again. Silva was shoving him away, continuing to land really well. He would stop the clinch, push him away, land a little bit in the clinch. He was kind of getting sick of Paul clinching with him. Paul was trying to clinch through this whole round, and Silva landing, especially that uppercut, really in tight. So I actually gave this, I gave this round to Silva. I thought it was a pretty clear Silva round. He was more aggressive again, doing what he needed to do. I had 48-47 in favor of Silva. Paul headbutts on the way in, and Silva kind of complains about it a little bit. This is not the first time, so if you look at after this fight and you want to see Silva's face, there was one really good punch that landed in the last round, but a lot of that damage actually came from the headbutts when they moved in to the close quarters and clinching. Paul landed a 3-piece combo that Silva kind of rolled with, and he was waiting on him to throw those. And then Silva threw back at him, but not with as much emphasis. This was a great end of the round. There was a great end of the round for Silva. Both guys staying in tight. Silva ducking down to prevent Paul from clinching. They both were basically hobbled over almost at 90 degrees from the waist, leaning down because Paul wanted to clinch and Silva refused to let him clinch. Paul landed some bigger shots that round in the early goings, and it just put him out in front. And that, like I said, this is what I really didn't like about Silva's strategy is he waited too long in these rounds to come on. And like I said, I think I know why based off what I saw in the last round. But I gave this round to Paul. I had it 57-57. Silva on the back foot in this next round. He was looking to counter Silva. Silva did not have a lot of damage, or Silva does have a lot of damage on his face, but that's from the headbutts, like I said. Paul was landing really well this round. Paul won that round, and it came down to the last round because I had it 67-66 in favor of Paul. Now, in this last round, Silva knew he needed a finish. He felt like he was behind on the scorecards. I mean, on one judge's scorecard at this point, he was tied. But in this round, Was he? No, he wouldn't have been tied. On one judge's scorecard, it was the same as mine, so it was 67 to 66 in favor of Paul. So one of the judges, in my opinion, got this right. Like I said, there were close rounds that could go either way. So, I mean, you make of it what you will, but in the end, it was the correct decision, and it's not an upsetting one. There was enough out there that can be discussed that maybe you can have a varied scorecards and still come up with the right decision here. Silva was unloading. He would not stop moving forward, throwing, but then a right hand from Paul knocks him down. What a great punch from Paul. Beautiful. Was it set up? No. Was it on the back foot because he was against the ropes? Absolutely. But the punch landed, man. It landed. And this is coming from, like I said, I love Silva. I'm an MMA fan, and I think what Paul is doing is, I don't think it's demeaning. I don't think it's negative for the sport of MMA, but I don't like the way that people talk about it in that they say, "Oh, look at boxing. It's so much better than MMA," or "Look, it's a better technique to use than MMA. It's more effective," or "Look, this guy who barely started boxing can beat the greatest MMA fighter of all time." Well, in my opinion, it's GSP, then Anderson Silva. But those are stupid arguments that I kind of don't want to get into. I just want to talk about this fight. So in this last round, Silva, he needed a finish after he got the knockdown because that's an automatic 10-8. And then Silva looked a little bit tired. So in the clinch, he wasn't able to land big, heavy shots. He still looked a little dazed. You can't argue with this one. The round came to an end. I had it 77 to 74 in favor of Paul. You can't argue with this one. Like I said, he did a great job, probably clinching too much for my liking, but hey, that's boxing. I mean, it is. It's boxing, guys. You know, what do you want? The best boxers in the world clinch like that. You know, every time Silva would get on a roll, unload a little bit, and push him against the ropes, Paul would clinch and stop the onslaught. Like I said at the start of this, that's one of the veteran techniques he picked up. Now, to defend what I said earlier, do I think Jake Paul outboxed Anderson Silva? No. Do I think Anderson Silva outboxed Jake Paul? Nah, not really. I felt like their boxing was about even. It just came down to the power shots. And Jake Paul landed the bigger power shots. He did, you know, especially in that last round. Now, a lot of these rounds were close, and you could lean either way. Maybe. I felt like there were some pretty clear-cut ones as well. 1 and 2 were really clear-cut. 1 for Paul, 2 for Silva. The middle rounds, 3 and 4, maybe you can go either way. But I had those for Silva and Paul, respectively. So I had it really. This was an even fight. It was an even match all the way up until the very end when Paul dropped him, and it was a great. This was exciting. It was fun to watch. I mean, there was other stuff that happened early on the card, and I watched them, but you know, it's not something. There was just so many fights this weekend, guys. So forgive me if I don't cover all of the boxing matches. I'm gonna go through all of Bellator and all of the UFC. There's just a lot of fights I got to break down, a lot of fights I have to watch, and I can only do so much. Also, my lawnmower broke today, so I wasn't able to get the lawn and like get all the leaves up. So my day has been kind of shit. Overall, the event and the way that announcers talk, and you know, I don't like Ariel Helwani. I never have. I don't know the guy. I know he has beef with a lot of people. I just have never been a fan of his style, right? The instigator kind of style that he was and is, the way he leads. You know, he's doesn't play the journalist so much as he leads people to making more definitive statements than they might have wanted. You know, he has very leading questions, and it's not something I enjoy when people do that, and that's his whole shtick. And, you know, a lot of people love him, and I get it. It's just he's not my favorite. And as a commentary sitting on like ringside, not great. I don't feel like these guys who, when they cover, I don't feel like they take it as serious. right? Because they always talk about, oh, Anderson Silva used to do this and Anderson Silva that. They'll always tell stories about how good Anderson Silva was, or the guy, right? They talk about their previous accomplishments, but they're not talking about the boxing match. Now they do. Obviously, they sprinkle that stuff in there. It's just they harp on the outside stuff just to give this more credibility than it deserves. You can let this be what it is. These are fun, high publicity celebrity fights. It's what they are. And there's nothing wrong with it. Right? This isn't a circus, right? I've seen shit in MMA like Hoist Gracie versus Ken Shamrock when they were like 100 years old. Holy shit, that was bad. That was in Bellator. Dada 5000 versus Ferguson. Oh boy. Now I'm drawing a blank on his name, and it's killing me because I really came to like the guy because I heard like he was such a nice guy. He ended up passing away. His son's still a fighter. Kimbo Slice. So Kimbo Slice versus Dada 5000, where Dada had to go to the hospital because he had like a couple heart attacks or whatever during the match because he was so out of shape. So before you guys, if you're having a visceral reaction to reset the damn focus here. If you're having a visceral reaction to the shows that Jake Paul is putting on, and you're saying, oh, these aren't legitimate, or this is demeaning to the sport, or whatever. This was, if you want to put a number on it, you can say 1,000, 100,000 times better than those two fights I just mentioned. Okay? We have a guy who's taking this very seriously for all of his faults and all the other things and why you don't like him. I'm not a fan of Jake Paul. I know a lot of people who love him. I really do. My best friend is a huge Jake Paul fan. He doesn't watch MMA. He doesn't watch boxing, but when Jake Paul boxes, he watches it, right? So he's at least bringing new people into the sport in general, right? If it can make my friend do that, it's pretty crazy because he has no interest in it whatsoever outside of these. And Anderson Silva, let me finish what I was saying about Jake Paul here. He's taken this very seriously, right? But for all the things, like I just said, like if you don't like him, that's fine. But he has taken this seriously. He has made huge improvements. Go back and watch his boxing match against Nate Robinson or even against Ben Askren. That was only a couple years ago, and he's made a ton of progress. He has a jab now. He moves well. His cardio is better. He was fainting in this match. He was doing real boxing things. And this is what happens when you have the means. I mean, he's got an unlimited supply of money. He can devote his entire life to training. He's naturally gifted athletically. And he's taking it serious. And he's also picking opponents that he feels like he can match up with and beat. And so far, he's done a great job doing that. And in the meantime, or along with him, he's bringing along actual boxers and giving them huge paydays. So he's bringing legitimate boxing with him. And yeah, there's other stuff on this card, like Uriah Hall versus the football player, which was a really weird one. I don't want to even talk about that stuff. But then there were two actual boxing matches. So there's a lot to like about what he's doing, even if you don't like the way he does it. Okay? And then you take on the other side here, you got Anderson Silva, obviously one of the highest decorated MMA fighters of all time, longest reigning UFC champion ever. He's a really good striker, unlike Ben Askren, who was a champion but couldn't strike. Like, I could probably box with Ben Askren, right? He's not a boxer. And they're bringing they're bringing skills to this match. And it's interesting to watch. It's not unfair. It's not disgusting. You don't watch this because you're watching a freak show. That's what Dada 5000 versus Kimbo Slice was. That's what Hoist Gracie versus Ken Shamrock was. That's what Tito Ortiz versus Chuck Liddell for the fourth time or whatever it was. Even Anderson Silva versus Tito Ortiz turned out to be a circus, but that's not what we thought it was going to be in the boxing match that they had last year, I believe. So this isn't that bad. It's not that bad. Right? We might have watched these celebrity fights a few years ago because it was a circus, right? It was a freak show. We tuned in because of the horror. Like, we would watch and look at like how shitty it was and how bad the technique was. But now, I've seen veteran fights that are worse than this. And this is fine. It's fine. And I know, like, this isn't a glowing endorsement of what he's doing. This is just, it exists, and what he's doing isn't hurting anybody's career or sport. Do you think anybody gives a shit that he knocked out Tyron, or that Tyron Woodley got knocked out by him? Yeah, in the moment they did. But does anybody really care? The dude made a ton of money. Who cares? His UFC career was what it was. His Strikeforce career was what it was. It will always be that way. And you say, like, oh, you're ruining your legacy. How? He retired. He retired from MMA. He took up a whole new sport. And he didn't look the same when he left MMA either. And look at Anderson Silva. He's 46. 46 years old, guys. What legacy is this ruining? You can tell me the things that he's doing now is going to affect what we remember about him when he was 25? No. Fuck off. Good job, Jake Paul. Props, man. You did it. You did a great job. That was a good boxing match. And you put it all out there. You took some good shots. You showed a veteran mindset using the clinch. Developed the jab. Good strategy. Anderson Silva's, he's over the hill. He's over the hill. And if he wants to box some more like this, I'm okay with it. I do not want to see him against younger boxers because he'll get destroyed. But to see Silva do this at this age and keep up and still be able to go out there and play, and what I think like a boxing match he could have won if he had a slightly different strategy, because it's really just about a couple punches here and there. That's all it was. Some of these rounds, just a couple punches. He lands one and Paul misses one. He just doesn't let him land a couple. Instead of staying in there and making a read and getting hit to the body, back out and then move back in. And I know this is hindsight, and I'm not in there. Obviously, I wouldn't stand a chance against either of these guys. I get it. What I'm saying is there was a strategy that Silva could have used to win this fight. He didn't, and it cost him. And Jake Paul, he capitalized. He absolutely, he took what Silva gave him, and he made it work, and he won. That is it. Like I said, it's very late. I'm going to cover the UFC card, so I'll cover the main card, the prelims there, and I'll cover Bellator, and I'll do all that stuff. So if you did make it this far, I really appreciate you spending time here. It means a lot to me. Thank you so much for stopping by. Subscribe to the channel so you know the next video is coming out. Like I said, I put out 2 or 3 videos every single week. This weekend's going to be a little bit more because there was a lot of events, a lot to cover. Forgive me for not covering. If you were a huge fan of the other people on the main card, forgive me for not covering them. If it was in a busy weekend and there was just a UFC, I would have covered all of them. I can't do it. So I do it. Like I said, I do appreciate y'all for stopping by. It means a lot to me. Thank you. The channel has done better since I changed the name, changed my uploading schedule a little bit. I'm getting more engagement, and I appreciate y'all for doing that. It means a lot to me. It means that this is like other people enjoy this as much as I do. I really love doing this, so it means a lot. All right. I hope you guys have an amazing week. If you're watching this right after I put it out, go to bed. It's so late, unless you're in another country, in which case it's really early. All right, guys. Thank you so much. Enjoy the rest of the weekend. Enjoy your week, and I love y'all.